Joining me now to discuss the Russia-Ukraine invasion as well as Russia-China ties, we have a lecturer of politics and international relations of Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Bola Adediran. Thanks for joining us on TVC News. So it's 1 year now since the Russian invasion occurred in Ukraine. How do you assess the conflict so far amidst hopes that it could, dissipate and end finally?
Well, it's been 1 year that has not gone to plan for either camp. Russians, it's not been a quick victory. At the beginning of the conflict last year, Vladimir Putin had high hopes that he could roll his tanks into the streets of Kiev and that his soldiers will be welcomed and that it will be a smooth and quick victory for his special military operation. For the Ukrainians, they've also had their moments where they push back the Russians significantly, and they managed to cause great harm to the Russian military. But the Russian military has also shown a lot of resilience. In fact, more than ever, Russia seems to have managed to succumb. It has managed to overcome many of its logistical problems at the later part of last year. So the war has not gone to plan for any of the opposing sides or any of the sides. And you rightly mentioned in the preliminary report that you had that the entrance by China into this conflict might spell a different direction for the conflict. For the Russians, it would be a much needed help, and it might further prolong this conflict more than any of us wants.
Right, and of course, as you have rightly observed, there is now a China involvement now this time around supporting Russia, and these two countries have, spoken condemning what they call bullying from the West and, those supporting Ukraine. And now there's talk about possible more sanctions on Russia. What do you make of this twist?
Well, China has been in a very balanced position throughout the war over the last 1 year. It has not openly supported Russia, nor has it openly condemned Russia. Of course, we know that China and Russia, about a year ago, in fact, just before the invasion of Ukraine last year, Russia and China signed an agreement basically openly stating that there would be no limits to their new relationship and almost everything, almost signaling to the world that there is a new partnership that is brewing between Russia and China. Since then, we've not seen China come out boldly in support of Russia. But over the last few weeks, we're seeing a slight change in that diplomatic relationship. In fact, not only Wang, the foreign minister, who is currently meeting Vladimir Putin, but there are indications that the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, might also be meeting with Vladimir Putin in the coming weeks. It seems that there is a slight move towards a sort of a greater role for China in this conflict. And Russia clearly badly needs that. What is obviously concerning is that on the one hand, the US is also taking a very strong position on this and saying that China's provision of arms and ammunition to Russia might be a red line that the Chinese may not want to cross. Of course, I have my own opinions about this.
Right, and where do the Bucharest Nine now? So what happens to their interests? U.S. President Biden is in Poland, is scheduled to meet with the Bucharest Nine, Lithuania, and a host of other countries that have similar ties. In Poland, for example, now there are fears amidst from Biden to Poland, thanking them for the support given to Ukraine so far, But there are fears of escalating tensions, this time around spilling into Lithuania, Poland, for example. Do you share those fears? And what do you think is likely to happen in the meeting between U.S. President Biden and the Bucharest Nine?
Well, I think the Bucharest Nine, in many ways, they affirm Russia's conclusions that NATO has been taking its time over the years. In fact, since the end of the Cold War and since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, that NATO has been taking its time to build a formidable line of NATO-supported countries and NATO countries along its borders. The Bucharest that either were part of the Soviet Union previously or were aligned or within Soviet orbit. And all of these countries are now bordering Russia. So there is a great concern by Russia. And sometimes I think that the media does not fully appreciate those security concerns that Russia has. And in fact, part of those dismissal of Russia's security concerns is why we are where we are today. Because not only the Bucharest Nine, but the inclusion of Sweden and Finland into NATO ambit, the discussions about Georgia and Ukraine as part of NATO have also created greater security concerns by Russia about NATO's intentions. So I think that what all of these things show to me is that the concerns of Russia were valid in the first instance, but at the same time, especially given what Russia is also trying to do now, in the last few days, the Russian president has cancelled a treaty agreement, basically recognizing the, okay.
All right, I'm sorry, Dr. Bola Adediran, we've run out of time. I apologize for the interruption, but we really must end this to bring up some stories before we end.
That's okay.
Many thanks. Still on the subject